Chapter 6 Going for the Gold. Babe and her teammates left Chicago's Union Station on the morning of Monday, July 18th, bound for California. They traveled in style, occupying their own Pullman car with a big red, white, and blue banner on its side that read, U.S. Olympic Team. A cross-country train trip was regarded as a great adventure in the 1930s. Few of the women had ever traveled on a sleeper, a special car with seats that convert into upper and lower berths at night. We felt like millionaires, one of them recalled. It was a dream. During the 5-day trip, Babe spent much of her time working out in the aisles, while, according to her, most of the girls sat around watching the scenery and playing cards and gabbing. Several times a day, I jogged the whole length of the train and back. People in the other cars took to calling out, "Here she comes again." Her antics embarrassed some of her teammates. Babe was very full of herself, and on the train, she was always pulling pranks, recalled Evelyn Hall, who would compete against Didrikson in the 80-meter hurdles at Los Angeles. She delighted in yanking the pillows out from under your head when you were asleep. She also used to take ice from the water cooler and drop it down our backs. Babe's sense of fun didn't appeal to everyone. She had no social graces whatsoever, said Jean Shiley, who had been elected team captain. She constantly wanted to be on center stage. It was impossible to get to know her because she was always chattering, talking, bragging. She ran around with her medals from Evanston saying, "I'm the greatest. No one's better than me. Babe Didrikson." Today, I don't think her behavior would seem so outrageous. People are used to flamboyant athletes. In those days, athletes were supposed to be full of humility and modesty. When the special train pulled into the Union Pacific Station in Los Angeles on the morning of July 23rd, the athletes stepped down from their Pullman car in high spirits, singing, "Hail, hail, the gang's all here." Jean Shiley spoke for the team as she told the reporters that they were by no means overconfident. They intended to train seriously and do their very best. Babe wasn't as modest. "I came out here to beat everybody in sight, and that's just what I'm going to do," she announced. "Sure, I can do anything." If her teammates felt that Babe was loud and self-centered, sports writers covering the Olympics saw her as a colorful personality with a healthy Texas ego and an engaging down-home frankness. "The Babe is no boaster and no braggart," said the New York Times. "She tells you simply what she can do, and then she does it." Babe was a good copy. She was always willing to talk, and she became a favorite of both the press and the public. Her optimism, her exuberant outburst of confidence, struck a sympathetic chord with millions of worried Americans who were struggling to get by that year. The 1932 Olympics took place in the depths of the worldwide economic depression. People looked to the pageantry of sports and the exploits of sports heroes for inspiration as well as for escape. Athletes were seen as larger-than-life figures who offered a vision of hope that hard work and persistence could be rewarded. They seemed to demonstrate that ordinary humans could win against heavy odds, and that the challenges of real life, too, could be conquered. Babe's humble working class background was widely known, and she was admired as one of the outstanding athletes in the Olympic Games. At the time, women were still something of a novelty as Olympic competitors. Track and field events for women had made their first appearance on an experimental basis at the 1928 Games, and as late as 1931, the International Olympic Committee had seriously considered eliminating all women's events. During the 1932 Games, male athletes were housed in the lavish new Olympic Village, the first ever built, while the women were put up at the rather ordinary Chapman Park Hotel. Babe and her teammates had arrived in Los Angeles a week before the opening of the Games. They used that time to train for the events they were going to enter, to meet with the press, and to mingle with the Hollywood stars who converged on the Olympic site. Screen idols were everywhere, rubbing shoulders with the athletes and posing for photographs with them. I got to meet a number of Hollywood stars I'd seen on the screen, said Babe. There was Clark Gable. He could really keep you laughing. And I spent some time with Will Rogers, too. He was another wonderful fellow. Even in this glamorous crowd, Babe Didrikson stood out. Reporters who were drawn to her by her athletic feats were won over by her warmth and her unpredictable sense of humor. Even when she boasted, which was most of the time, her folksy, down-to-earth way of speaking had reporters quoting her endlessly. More than once, she had been praised for her superb neuromuscular condition. Sports writer Grantland Rice had hailed her as the most flawless section of muscle harmony of complete mental and physical coordination the world of sports has ever known. Babe translated this in her own way. Folks say that I go about winning these athletic games because I have the cooperation thing that has to do with eye, mind, and muscle. That sure is a powerful lot of language to use about a girl from Texas. Maybe they are right about it. All I know is that I can run, and I can jump, and I can toss things. And when they fire a gun or tell me to get busy, I just say to myself, well, kid, here's another you've got to win another, and I usually do. Although Babe turned 21 a few days before the games opened, she was widely believed to be 19. On her application form for the Olympics, she had fudged a bit, writing in her penciled girlish scrawl that she was born in 1913 rather than 1911. And when reporters hailed her as a teenage athletic marvel, she did not bother to correct them. The 10th Olympiad at Los Angeles extended from July 30th to August 14th, 1932. 1,300 athletes, 1/10 of them women, took part in the spectacular opening ceremony before a capacity crowd of 105,000 at the Los Angeles Coliseum, while 50,000 more people swarmed about outside, hoping for a glimpse of the ceremony. It was up to the biggest crowd ever the Olympics had ever seen, and the first of a lavish opening ceremonies that would become an Olympic tradition. A 250-piece band and a white-robed choir of 1,200 voices joined in a rousing rendition of the Star-Spangled Banner. Then, marching ranks of tanned and healthy athletes paraded into the stadium. beginning, as tradition dictated, with the delegation from Greece and ending with the host Americans. The Americans' women's team included swimmers, divers, and fencers as well as track and field athletes, 37 women in all. They waited their turn in the main tunnel leading to the field, then emerged from the darkness into the blinding California sunlight for their first look at the immense crowd. They wore uniforms of white skirts and blouses, red vests and hats, and stiff new shoes. After an artillery salute and the Olympic flag raising, 2,000 pigeons were released into the air. Trumpets blared, the Olympic flame was lit, and the assembled athletes, standing in columns that stretched across the field, repeated the words of the Olympic oath in a dozen different languages. Then they stood patiently under the hot sun while the Vice President of the United States and the other dignitaries made welcoming speeches. To tell you the truth, Babe admitted later, I couldn't enjoy the ceremonies that much after we got out there. We all had to wear special dresses and stockings and white shoes that the Olympic Committee had issued to us. I believe that was about the first time I'd ever worn a pair of stockings in my life. I was used to anklets and socks, and for those shoes, they were really hurting my feet. Babe felt that those shoes were getting tighter and tighter. She listened to the speeches, studied the shirt-sleeved crowd in the grandstands, and counted the flags of participating nations fluttering in the breeze around the new stadium. But her feet were killing her. Finally, she kicked off both shoes. The woman standing behind her noticed this and kicked off her shoes too. By the time the speeches ended, practically every woman in the American contingent had her shoes off.